Welcome back to 4FS Gaming, and it's that time of the week again where we will pull apart a little bit of Star Wars Battlefront 2 and put it under the microscope and figure out exactly how it works. Today we will reveal the secrets of the aerial reinforcement and also look into some tactics as well. So these jump troopers are available to all factions, but the catch is that not all aerial troopers are created equal. They have different weapons, and some even have different stats in other areas. I was a bit unsure whether to make one video or 6 to cover all of these different aerial reinforcements. Instead, I decided to go and make 2. To start with in this video, I'll go over the basics that are common for all jump troopers, and then we will look at the tactics that we can derive from these abilities. So that's what this video here will consist of. In a follow-up video, I shall put the spotlight on the individual faction reinforcements. We'll look at what each of their weapons do, and I'll include damage numbers, damage per second testing, and range drop-off, with a few points on how this affects them and how best to play them, and some recommendations on what jump troopers are actually worth using. Aerial reinforcements cost battle points, but not a huge amount. They are usually 1,000 less than the Enforcer class, which puts them at 1,000 or 2,000 depending on your game mode. This makes them the cheapest reinforcement character, and they're only slightly tougher than your average trooper. An aerial reinforcement has 200 health, and this is exactly the same as the heavy class. So this is pretty low as far as reinforcements go, and if you go around thinking that you can tank damage just because you're a reinforcement, you're probably not going to have a good time as a jump trooper. You need to play hit and run, and avoid areas of crossfire just as you would as a normal trooper. The slight exception to this is the Separatist's rocket droid, which inexplicably has 300 health, and that makes it much tougher, and actually a pretty damn good buy for the battle point cost. As for its health regeneration stats, all aerial units will begin to gain health back after 6 seconds of not taking damage. They will regenerate at a rate of 40 points per second, which can be increased with star cards. I know in the past that I have said that Enforcers regenerate at 37 points per second, but this discrepancy may be due to overlapping frames between the capture software and the editing software I use to slow down the footage, so I don't want you to go away thinking there's much of a difference between an Enforcer and an aerial when it comes to health regen. It's most likely the same. Now as for movement, aerial troops run and walk at the same speed as your standard character. However, instead of a dodge roll, they are equipped with a jetpack dash. This doesn't have much of a cooldown, so you can use it in much the same way really as a dodge roll. And it does allow for more distance than the roll, but it is easier to hit a dashing target with a gun than a dodging one. Whether this is due to a difference in invincibility frames, or just the hitbox size, I'm not really sure. Another interesting point is that the aerial classes will deal 65 damage with their melee attack. This is higher than the stock 50 damage of a normal trooper's punch, but it is still almost always better to shoot in close range unless your weapon has overheated. Finally, as with all reinforcements, these troopers can only be played in the third person view. This is not really a problem, as generally third person makes it a lot easier to be aware of your surroundings and of course to corner peek enemies. However, with some guns that are usually scoped in, you'll be unable to put on that scope, and it can also cause problems when using the rocket droid's wrist blaster, as it can be hard to see exactly what cover is in front of your firing arm, leading to some shots hitting nearby cover or friendly units getting in the way when you are almost certain that you had a clear shot. So that covers it for the neutral game, but when it comes to abilities, the aerial class is all about mobility. They are equipped with 2 jetpack abilities, one of which provides vertical thrust and one that provides horizontal thrust. The vertical thrust has a lift duration of 2.5 seconds, while the horizontal dash has a duration of 1.5 seconds. If you land upon terrain prior to the conclusion of this duration, for example if you're using the horizontal dash to try and go up a hill, you will land and then move normally as the jetpack will deactivate. However, the ability hexagon will remain white until the duration is complete, and only then will it begin the cooldown. The cooldowns themselves are 7 seconds for both abilities. This can be further reduced by star cards, but even without those, it allows for incredible mobility. Between the dash and the 2 powerful jetpack bursts, you can completely reposition yourself on the battlefield. The aerial trooper is able to be just about anywhere they want, at any time that they want. You can also shoot your weapons while you're in the air. You can pull out and shoot your rocket, and if I remember correctly, you can even make a melee attack, not that that's particularly useful. You can also still activate the jetpack if you're carrying an objective, if you're playing a game type which allows you to pick up and move with the objective. This is of course particularly useful in Strike when you have to deliver the data from point A to point B. Now although it is possible to control your direction somewhat while activating the jetpack, it is extremely limited. Instead, you really select your direction of travel by the way that you are moving while you press the activation button. You also need to be exceptionally careful of clipping terrain when activating the pack, as if you get caught on a beam or a tree branch, it can halt your momentum completely, making you an easy target for nearby enemies. You can also never cancel the jetpack early, so you need to know where you want to land and aim for it before you activate the pack. Otherwise, you will be unable to make the necessary adjustments mid-flight. One final point about the jetpack is that you are in constant risk of flying off the map in areas where you can fall to your death. It really is tempting to fly around getting mad flanks on Kashik Blast map, but it's also really easy to mistime a jump and go crashing to your death. Of course, the other ability common to all aerial troopers is the rocket. This is a shoulder-mounted launcher for most factions, however the rocket droid gets the famous wrist rocket. The rocket is, well, it's identical to the wrist rocket of the super battle droid, but across all of the factions. It will deal 250 damage on a direct hit, but that blast radius is very small. You'll need to hit within a few meters in order to kill an assault, and your chances of killing a heavy, buffed up officer or another aerial trooper with splash damage is really quite low. The rocket does have its uses, however. That burst of damage is great for clearing out turrets before taking flight, because even though human players are not good at shooting you out of the air, officer turrets are pretty damn good at it. You can also use your jump to set up a shot with the rocket that would otherwise be impossible. Firing it down from above also makes it easier to land close enough to a target for an instant kill. The rocket does however cool down slowly, with 32 seconds before you can fire it again. Now of course you can decrease this a fair bit with star cards, but you cannot increase the blast radius as you can with the Enforcer class, so I would question exactly how useful this ability is, and instead recommend star cards that increase your survivability and movement. Let's work down a list of general tactics that applies to the aerial class, and I'll save the super specific stuff for my follow-up video. Firstly, you need to remember that as an aerial trooper, you're not really that tough. You can still get one-shot by snipers, vanguards, and very quickly killed by a variety of range weapons at different ranges. Because of this, your defense is your speed, and your ability to reposition so quickly. Unfortunately, it also means that your class is more effective on exterior maps than interior ones. When you're outside, you can leave any fight that you don't fancy your chances in, and then come back and re-engage from a much better angle. Another point that we will go over in much more detail in the follow-up video is that your weapons are actually a fair bit stronger than their equivalents given to normal troopers. This does not mean you can go toe-to-toe with multiple enemies like Enforcers can, but it does give you a really good shot in one-on-one duels. In fact, when fighting a single opponent, it should actually be pretty difficult for you to lose, given that you can almost always choose when and where you enter each other's line of sight. I also like to think of the jump trooper as a bit of an objective trooper, kind of like the officer. You can get to objectives much faster than anyone else, and you're relatively cheap in battle points. So this makes the jump trooper ideal for desperate pushes in overtime on Strike or Galactic Assault. And speaking of Strike, because you can actually carry that intel package and travel huge distances with it very quickly, you can get some pretty cheap wins before your opponents even understand what's going on. Of course, we really do need to recognize the fact that the actual weapon that you are equipped with, as determined by your faction, plays a huge role in how the aerial trooper functions, but it will mainly dictate the optimal range of engagement for you. Stay within this when it is time to do some damage, but prepare to bug out at light speed if you get overwhelmed. As for using the rocket itself, as previously mentioned, it is great for clearing out turrets or any stationary hardware or equipment upon which you can guarantee a direct hit. The rocket is designed to be used in synergy with your jump pack, so position yourself before you shoot, and striking with the rocket while airborne is especially satisfying. As for clearing out those groups of enemies, the radius is probably a little bit lacking for that, but if there are clumps of enemies to deal with, you can always get lucky. As a general rule, you don't really want to be fighting in corridors or enclosed spaces where you can clip onto terrain. You might as well just play a normal trooper if your jetpack won't help you. You can also access places on the various maps that other classes simply cannot. This is good for aerial troopers with more long-range weapons, as you can use strange places as unexpected sniper nests, in which you can't be snuck up on. That being said, always remain aware and ready to boost out, in case an enemy is determined to get to you or kill you with grenades. Of course, the aerial trooper is exceptionally good at avoiding grenades, because a few dashes and you will be well outside the radius. I think I would be a little bit remiss if I didn't give my quick opinion about what jump troopers are top tier. So let's just say that the Rebels and the Separatists have a really nice aerial class, as do to some extent the First Order. Check back next week and hopefully I'll have the second half of this analysis, with full details on all the separate aerial weapons and some more faction specific tactics. If you want to make sure you catch that video, don't forget to check that your notifications are turned on and you've subbed to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. This is Ascendance from 4FS Gaming.